From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on March 31st, 2025, from South Carolina Public Radio Studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, we're catching you up on the Republican push to reform and lower taxes in the state. We look at what is on tap this week at the Statehouse, and Winthrop Poll Director Dr. Scott Huffmon joins us to break down his latest poll findings, and we get our first look at the 2026 governor's race.
2026 watch.
I know. And we have some more targets and endorsements in the 2026 midterms to look out for. Everything's 2026. No, this is not an April Fool's Day joke. We need you to call us at 803-563-7169. Maybe drop us an April Fool's Day joke like you're going to stop listening. That'd be funny. Never stop listening to The Lede. 803-563-7169. Give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you. On tap for this week in the Statehouse, lawmakers are back and in session. Up in Congress, yes, Congress is also in this week as well. Everyone's working for the weekend. And on the economics calendar, we get March unemployment numbers on Friday. So stand by for that number, that update. Last week, we saw leaders of both chambers join the governor and members in the Statehouse lobby in a unifying call to lower the state's tax rate from 6.2% down to 3.99%. The push to lower taxes has been a focus in recent years, especially in light of our growing tax base, which already fueled the decline of the state's income tax from 7% to 6.5% in 2022, and lawmakers have continued to lower it by at least 0.1% every year since. Now, lawmakers have been working for months on a new proposal that will collapse the two-tier tax system into one flat rate of 3.99%, with plans to go even further to like 2.49% in the future. Here's House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Bruce Bannister talking about the details.
Unlike tax swaps implemented in other states, it is not our intention to change the revenue source. It is our intention to reduce it. That's what true tax reform is. We are committed to reducing the income tax burden on our residents without shifting the tax load to other areas like property tax or sales tax. The reform's a bold move, and it comes at a cost, about $200 million. But I believe that investing in the tax cut is an investment in our future. Our plan is not just about cutting taxes. We understand that everyone's situation is different, which is why the bill includes a personal exemption for certain wage earners, making sure those who need the most help will benefit the most. We're also keeping the tax benefits that matter most to South Carolinians. The bill maintains all the existing deductions and credits, including those for military families, senior citizens, and families with dependents. These deductions will continue to help the people who need them the most. Now, I know the changes to the tax system can raise some questions, so let me tell you what else will be changing. The withholding tables for the South Carolina Department of Revenue will be adjusted. What that means is every South Carolinian's paycheck will get more money to the South Carolinian, less money to the government. You'll have more to spend during your monthly paychecks. You'll have more money to invest, more money to save. To summarize, the lower tax rate, a simpler tax system, and more money in your pocket. It's a win for families, workers, and businesses in South Carolina.
It's likely that this plan has been a big carrot in the background for many folks with sticks. Whether it's due to controversial legislation, budget requests, or more, a major tax reform like this will kind of keep some wind in the sails there, keep folks in line. Mixing a lot of metaphors, but you know how it works. Walk the plank. Now, Governor Henry McMaster also applauded the move to lower taxes, something he's been pushing for throughout his tenure.
I'd like to remind everybody that when you make money, the word make is used because you are making a thing. You are making a possession. Your money that you make, that you earn, that you have is your money. It belongs to the taxpayers. The government has no claim on it until you make it. And then under the law, they're allowed to have some in order to make things better for all the state, all the country. But it's been too much, and it's holding us back.
There is no average amount that the typical taxpayer can expect to see should this legislation get passed into law. Again, one more thing to get done before May 8th, that is. And of course, this isn't even an election year, and we have more to do. Now, H 4216 dropped last week, and it already has a subcommittee hearing set for April 1st, not a joke, at 10:30 a.m. Expect this bill to zoom, as they say. But here is Chairman Bannister one more time on what this would mean for you.
Normal taxpayer or average citizen, everybody's tax return is different. So there's not really there are people in the $1 million tax bracket who will get a break, and there are people in the $1 million tax bracket who will pay more that just don't pay anything now. So there's no average number. What we do know is that when we change the tables and the withholding tables, every South Carolinian who gets a paycheck will have more money in their paycheck than they did before this change.
There is, again, strong momentum to get legislation reforming the tax rate past this session. But we are coming up to a hard sine-die deadline, and there are a lot of competing priorities, guys. We're talking energy legislation, school voucher bills, the budget in the Senate, and a potential impeachment in that chamber as well. Where are they going to find the time? But let's continue our preview for this week and talk about finding time.
Okay.
In the Senate, now currently free from the bonds of tort reform, the chamber will continue working through its calendar, with utility legislation as its next target. One major hearing we'll be watching this week is the second appearance of Dr. Ed Simmer before the full Senate Medical Affairs Committee as part of his confirmation hearing to run the Department of Public Health. Simmer, who is supported by the governor, has faced pushback from some Republicans over misinformation involving vaccines, masks, mandates, and other policies since Simmer first ran DPH's predecessor, DHEC, back in early 2021. Over to the House, they got caught up on two major bills last week that the chamber apparently wasn't ready to debate. That was the anti-DEI bill and a hands-free device driving bill. There's a full Education and Public Works meeting on Tuesday, and that tax bill hearing is also Tuesday morning, as well as a full Judiciary Committee hearing that afternoon. A lot of serious meetings for a joking day. On Wednesday morning, the 3M Committee will meet to take up S2, which will consolidate several state health agencies into one. Next up, as we move out of the Statehouse, but somewhat related, the campaign trail, campaign watch 2026.
2026 watch.
With campaign announcements forthcoming, let's start cranking up the campaign 2026 watch. To do that, I spoke with Dr. Scott Huffmon, who is a political science professor at Winthrop University and is also author of its Winthrop Poll. In fact, Scott just recently dropped a general population survey they did between February 21st and March 5th, and in it, Huffmon polled on name recognition of several possible Republican candidates for governor, which is what much of our conversation on This Week in South Carolina focused on. But I opened by asking Scott about the several names floating around for the governor's race that he polled on, including 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace, 28 gubernatorial candidate John Warren, 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette, Spartanburg Senator Josh Kimbrell, and Attorney General Alan Wilson. So those are some potentials. No one's declared, but here, take a listen to our discussion.
Well, first of all, this election is over a year away. So, polling likely voters, people would say they're likely to vote in it. I don't think we would have gotten much. We generally do general population polls anyway. We did break it down, though, as for the general population and people who said they were Republicans who had voted in the Republican presidential primary. What we found didn't surprise me because we didn't ask who they were going to vote for. We asked how familiar. We asked name recognition. And not surprisingly, Nancy Mace was the most recognizable name. She is very good at, getting her name out there, appearing on cable news, making sure she is in the news. Next, of course, was Alan Wilson, who, not surprisingly, because he is a statewide elected official, our attorney general. And then the rest were much lower, especially among the general population. Among Republicans who had voted in the previous presidential primary, they were a little better known. But again, the best known person was Nancy Mace. That said, having the highest name recognition doesn't automatically translate into votes, especially this far out.
And why is that, Scott? Is it just because, hey, I've seen your name, that doesn't necessarily mean I like you, essentially? It's just that you've been getting so many headlines, especially with May. She's on social media constantly. She made a lot of accusations about sexual misconduct from the House floor in a very fiery speech. And then you have people like Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett, who's maybe not making as much headway, not making as many waves, I should say. Same with the Attorney General, who's been just kind of doing his normal stuff as AG. Is that going to be something that we're going to start watching change over the coming months, I guess, to see really who is getting that support?
Yeah, I think it is. Again, as you said, just because you know a name doesn't mean that that's who the horse you're going to back in the race. What it means is you're going to have to spend less of your campaign money getting your name well known in the state. The people who strong Republicans might vote for, and again, it's mainly overwhelmingly going to be just strong Republicans voting in that primary. The people who are going to vote in that primary, once they become familiar with all the candidates, it might not be the person whose name they most recognized a year before. But again, what that means is anybody who's lower on the list for name recognition will have to spend more of their money early on in the campaign to get their name well known across the state.
So, Scott, just look at the field, look at the people that you survey, those names. It seems like there's a lot of familiarity in that field. I mean, what do you think folks are going to really have to do? I mean, is it going to be a matter of bomb throwing? Is it going to be a matter of who gets that Trump endorsement, running as right as possible for these primary voters? Just based on what you've seen in past primaries, what you think these folks are have to do, especially since they all share pretty similar messages?
Well, of course, in representative districts that are so gerrymandered, you definitely have to run far to the right or far to the left. This, of course, is a statewide race. But once again, it is the strongest partisans who show up. So you're not going to win by saying, hey, we need to change things nationally and be much more moderate in our conservatism. That is not how you're going to win over the folks who are going to participate in the Republican gubernatorial primary. Endorsements do matter, especially in races like this. Remember, Nikki Haley was at the bottom of a list of 4, I believe, and then Sarah Palin endorsed her and jumped her up, and she, won in a runoff. So that can really matter as folks vie for those really important endorsements from Trump and, of course, from Nikki Haley as well. But they are going to have to run further to the right than they would in a general election, hit the issues that are important nationally, because all politics are national now. Tip O'Neill's days are over, saying all politics is local. That is just simply not the case anymore.
When we look at one of those candidates, potential candidates, Senator Josh Kimbrell had some of the lowest name ID and said this week that he's launching an exploratory committee to look into a run, which I'm told is just weeks away at this point. Is this a move that you kind of have to do at this stage, again, more than a year out from that June primary, that you have to do in order to get that name ID out there, to start spending money and raising money to get folks to know who you are?
Absolutely. You have to begin building the apparatus that will help you raise money first and foremost, because you need money to get your name out there. You will also be sort of looking around for people who might back you. You will be testing messages to see what works best. Do you need to kind of play with different messages in different parts of the state as you travel around? Where are going to be the most important places to run your ads on TV? Where do you need to visit more than others? An exploratory committee kind of touches on all those things. But as you said, the first things that it does is help you find a network to raise money, because that's what you need to do all those other things.
And I know we're really focused on this governor's race, and this it's still very early, but when we look at Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Scott, we've seen her take a lot of different sides, take a lot of different issues. She's made a lot of different claims. She's, again, constantly on social media. A big issue for her is transgender issues. Just based on what you've seen so far, again, nothing's official, nothing's formal when it comes to a race, but do you think what you've seen from Congresswoman Mace is going to translate statewide? Do you think some of her situations with her personal life is going to help or hurt her? How do you kind of maybe sum up Congresswoman Mace's potential right now at this point?
Well, I'm not sure how anything involved in her personal life will play out a year from now. Trans issues are a very symbolic issue. It's really not a relevant issue for the most part. There are very few trans folks. There are, I think only 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. So this issue is much more symbolic, but it is a symbolic issue that conservatives across the country, strong conservatives, care a lot about. And it's a way to get an earworm in their ear so that they will listen to other things you say. So she is really hitting an issue with that even though it is primarily symbolic, that is the kind of issue you need to put your name on in order to get people who are further right in the Republican Party, and that's who she needs to win over.
And of course, this is a statewide race, but when you talk about, gerrymandering and other issues in our state, you recently put out a column in the Post and Courier titled "Many SC Moderates Wish Our Politics Will Change. Here's Why It Probably Won't." It's something we've talked about before, even with an influx of transplants to the state, bringing a variety of political ideologies with them. What was the gist of your column there? What were you getting at? What do you tell folks when they ask you about possibly seeing the state becoming purple, even though we've seen it be largely red and remaining very red?
Well, the interesting thing about South Carolina is it is one of the growth states in the South. It used to be Rim South, Deep South. Now we break up the South as the growth South and the stagnant South. In pretty much every other growth South state, we see that growth pushing it towards more purple as people come into the urban areas and they're much more blue. In South Carolina, a lot of the growth are retirees and they're bringing down their conservative beliefs. And so we aren't becoming as purple as a lot of other southern growth states. So again, the growth here isn't exactly matching growth in other southern states where we see that purple hue beginning to take hold.
And when we look at some popular statewide elected officials, Governor McMaster continues to enjoy being the most popular statewide elected official. I'm wondering, do you think folks will look at that popularity and that might translate into maybe some temperament, some messaging, some approaches to governing when we look at his successor? Or do you think that's just classic Henry McMaster and how he's always approached politics? Do you think we're going to see any remnants of him and his legacy in his successor?
Well, I think when folks are running, they will latch on to the things that Henry McMaster has done that have been popular. Obviously his lieutenant governor is going to jump on and take credit for a lot of those as well. But as you mentioned, moderates just don't show up for the primaries. So all these folks who would like a more moderate version of conservatism, or on the other side, a more moderate version of liberalism, they're not the ones showing up. So the part of Henry McMaster's legacy that the candidates are going to latch on to as, hey, this is my issue too, are the ones that are most popular with conservatives in the state, much more than ones that are popular with the state in general.
And when we look at Senator Lindsey Graham, not the most popular statewide elected official. In fact, he lags in popularity, always seems to, with an approval rating at 34%. Among Republicans, that support moves up to 55%. Should Graham, who's up for re-election in 2026 and will likely have some challengers, do you think he should be worried when he sees numbers like that? Or do you think, he's maybe not banking too much, but also not taking anything for granted, but also realizing that he has more than $50 million in the bank, has a strong team, endorsements, and a machine across the state? How do you see Lindsey Graham looking at those popularity numbers and his operation going into 2026?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. He knows that he has to watch his back, but also that he's got a huge war chest. He can tap into some endorsements again. Whichever way the wind blows with Trump, he has been on the correct side of most of it. When he was seen as criticizing Trump, very soon after that, he was the most vicious defender of Brett Kavanaugh during those, hearings for the Supreme Court. So Lindsey Graham knows when to lift his sails and let the winds blow him as they may when it comes to conservative politics. And again, you're going to see a lot of people who are going to claim that Lindsey Graham is too moderate. He doesn't support Trump enough, but he's got that war chest that's really going to protect him. And, we've already seen 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman say he might primary Lindsey Graham. So there's already some well-known folks that could be coming after him, but he does have that statewide national machine. He's got people nationally and internationally that want him to keep his seat So again, his network is even broader than the state of South Carolina.
Speaking of Senator Lindsey Graham in there, Graham has received several big endorsements over the past few days, including from President Donald Trump, who Graham is a close ally of and has defended him and the administration nearly every Sunday on the Sunday shows. But not this week, folks. But Graham on Monday also secured major endorsements from the Susan B. Anthony pro-life president, Marjorie Dannenfelser, and leaders from South Carolina Citizens for Life and National Right to Life. So really locking up those endorsements, especially that Trump endorsement, which you cannot underestimate in this race. These early endorsements also serve as a warning to those who may think to challenge Graham from his right. So far, there are two other Republicans in this race, Mark Lynch and Ethan Clay Holloman. That's according to the FEC. Sticking with the 2026 race, but switching to the House, Emily's List put two U.S. House Republicans from South Carolina, quote-unquote, on notice as key 2026 flip targets. Emily's List, which works to elect Democratic pro-choice women up and down the ballot and across the country, named 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace and 2nd District Congressman Joe Wilson as their targets. The group said naming them among 46 House Republicans as top targets for defeat in the midterms is the Democratic Party's best path to flip Republican-held seats and take back power in the U.S. House. However, both districts are ranked solid Republican by the Cook Political Report. Not likely, not lean, not toss-up. No, they are solid red in R+7 and R+8 districts, respectively. So may the games begin 2026. Welcome to the Wind Down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here with me and A.T. Shire, lead podcast producer.
Thank you. Gavin, you say they're here with us, maybe in spirit only.
Are they here with us right now?
Maybe in spirit only, because we have no calls.
Oh.
Want to hear the empty hopper? Hold on.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, state of affairs, people.
It's been so good lately. But, well, we have time for us to talk.
Yeah, just an early April Fool's joke on us. And we look like fools right now.
This is funny.
We look
get it.
Dumb. I hope you're laughing.
I never played any pranks in my day.
I wasn't a pranker. You know me, okay? As listeners, you know me too. If there's a day for spoofs and goofs, there's nothing I want to do less, okay? I'm that recalcitrant, you know what I mean?
Do it today or April 2nd. Otherwise, we don't do it on the news. Thanks, but no thanks.
A little hat on a hat. Don't love it.
My best friend Joanna, who I believe listens because she has this one-sided relationship with us now. She listens to me on the podcast. We still talk.
But why would she have to talk to you if she listens? She knows what you're going to say.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's why I get the best of both worlds.
My family does the same thing. Yeah,
and we share the Wordle score every morning. But her go-to April Fool's Day prank was always just to call her mother and say that she was pregnant.
Oh yeah.
But for the longest time, Joanna wasn't dating anyone, so I don't know if maybe she got to resuscitate that this year.
It's still a fun joke.
It's still
a fun joke.
You know, it could happen.
It happens. I can tell you that when Caitlin and I told our family that we were having Rena, it was met with skepticism for sure.
Are you sure?
Yeah, getting that third cat really throws people off the scent. You know,
that was the thing.
They were like, oh, they're definitely never.
And the cat
children.
too. Wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
You think you think you can swing all that? Okay.
Especially since your one cat is so
regal. If you're listening to this right now, you need to go to the South Carolina Public Radio Facebook and vote for Reggie in the cat bracket, the cat March Meowness.
Is that how we met our fundraising goals? Because we had him out there working for us.
I think it's about 50-50. Two pledge drives in a row that he's sort of been a shadow mascot in a way, and we've met both goals. So people, this cat. He deserves it, okay? But Gavin, speaking of parenting, okay, I had a real.
Yes, I'll give you advice.
I got knocked down a few pegs here, okay?
Oh, no.
So Rena, she's teething, right? She's teething. Her gums hurt. She's doing everything she can to mitigate it. She had her hands deep in her mouth, okay? Yeah, just like making the wettest hand you could make, right?
Yeah.
Slobbering all over. She was wiggling around. We were in her little pen, and she was wriggling around. And I grabbed her. I was like, "Cool it, bud." And
Slobber City.
She turned those tables on me so fast. She turned around and took that wet hand and stuck it in my mouth and up my nose. In my mouth and up my nose. so
she
fast.
had no balance.
So fast. It was like a sensei showing you the like one hand punch. You know what I mean?
She said, "Silence, old man."
It was. It was. I mean, I had no.
She almost killed you.
I had no defense possible. It was so quick.
It's their first attempt on your life.
I'm surprised I've made it into the office today and wasn't sick. Truly.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
a little germ ball.
I thought that I was sick. We have started washing her hands when she comes home from daycare, which
it
has helped a lot. I mean, it started.
Spray that kid down when she walks in the door.
No, we change the clothes. We clean her feet.
Do all like the early COVID stuff that no one knew what they were. Wash her like a bag of groceries.
20 seconds washing, please. Oh, I never clean my groceries.
I never clean my groceries.
That was insane. That was crazy.
We can do our 5-year look back. We need to do we need to go through all the old episodes and start replaying some.
What we were doing back then?
I think that could be kind of fun, right?
Well, a wind back, rewind.
A wind up?
a rewind back. There
I mean, honestly, that really got us through COVID.
It was all I had.
Yeah,
that's all I had.
Yeah.
You kidding me?
I guess I was out and about so much that I didn't ever feel like I was like totally restricted by so many things, but I know that was unique for some people.
Well, you were working and in the field and around a bunch of people.
But then it's like...
Speaking around being around a bunch of people, Gavin, you had the opposite of a baby's wet hand in your mouth. You were at the Cup, Carolina Cup.
Yeah, I was a stand-in, so duty calls. I'm always waiting to be deployed by my friends.
You're always on the bench. You're always on the bench.
And it's like, we need, has a good outfit, positive attitude, will travel.
Where is it?
It's in Camden.
Camden.
Yes.
Okay, and that's where you watch horses, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, I didn't even know there's a horse race here. No, of course I did because I bet on a couple of races. Just friendly wagers.
That's what I would be into.
The horse that I bet on, Mischief Afoot, love the name. Number 8.
That's how you choose,
Pink
right?
and black jockey, the silk was. I was like, okay, I can't go wrong with this Mischief Afoot. Well, apparently he got bucked off of the horse.
What?
So, like the last lap, and you just hear like Mischief Afoot has lost its rider. I'm like, well, I'm done betting.
Has been unhorsed?
I'm done betting today. Because it's like you're just throwing darts at a board. And then people are asking you, who's scratch? And you inadvertently know what horses scratch. It's wild.
What's
time.
his sire?
Who's the sire? But I love it. I've only really ever covered the Carolina Cup. But I did get to go a couple years ago and got to go into one of the big fancy tents. We did it again this year too. It was fun. Got to see. It's always a good time to see people.
Do you wear too many clothes on a warm day?
I was so against it, and then I did it, and I was like, I can't not wear a tie now.
Well, you can't take the coat off because the pit stain.
Was very lucky that the conditions were pretty good. We had some good wind. We had some good cloud cover.
Does it turn into like a slop field?
It can, but not only if it's rained around it. Like 2 years ago when I was out there, it was pretty sloppy. So everyone goes boots. This year you're wearing
duck.
The women are trying to get away with like wedge heels and exposed feet. And
are they on grass?
Oh yeah. So you're getting some discoloration.
You're aerating the ground, poking holes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a good time. It's a little bit like going to a USC football game, but
the tailgate never ends.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, a little bit higher brow.
Higher brow?
You know,
I don't know.
I specifically brought champagne flutes. You're going to just do that. You're just going to do it. You want to drink in a glass.
The importance of proper stemware.
I could have brought a...
That's why you're always on the bench.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gavin. You're always strapped. You know what I mean? I almost exclusively drink out of the 2001 Burger King Lord of the Rings goblets at home. And I do have 2 sets. Thank you very much.
My mint julep cups, of course.
Of course, obviously.
I didn't drink any bourbon on Saturday.
No, you got to get back from Camden.
It's a whole day event. It's like kind of what we did for St. Patrick's Day. A little bit of a different situation than 5 Points St. Patrick's.
To that.
Yes.
Yeah, I
wasn't driving. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
Was there a Zinn trailer there, Gavin? Like at 5 Points?
Not that I noticed, unless it was dressed up like a Vineyard Vines store.
I have never seen anything more like just a nicotine addiction indoctrination machine. It was a Zinn trailer that was selling all these things for $1.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, first one's free, kid. You know what I mean?
Ever since Winston Cup got out of the racing stuff, it's like, where did we go from here?
I just wish there were a cool animal mascot who used them. Anyway,
someone with a hump that conserves water in the desert. We'll never know.
We'll never know, Gavin. Just like we'll never know what else we talked about
something
today.
Joe.
Yeah. Always glasses inside, outside, day, night, doesn't matter. Gavin, say the outro, please. Have a good week. Don't get too April Fooled tomorrow.
Yes, thank you for listening. Give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you guys. 803-563-7169. And you can always stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
Cameron. Not that one.
But he does lose an eye.
Not that one. It's not Cameron.
What a multifaceted actor.
He can play Captain Ron.
He can play a bad guy, he can play a good bad guy.
He can play a bad good guy.
Pilot.